recruited and trained, while 16,810 medical interns have undergone internship, bringing healthcare services closer to communities. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes the critical role the contracted healthcare facilities play in the delivery of healthcare services to Kenyans. It is with this in mind that the government in the current financial year of 25-26 allocated 4 billion for settlement of outstanding National Hospital Insurance Fund pending bills. And going forward, we will settle the balance of the bills that are owed under the defunct National Hospital Insurance Fund and which span over the years. Mr. Speaker, this allocation is specifically designated for settlement of NHIF pending bills owed to contracted health care facilities in accordance with the presidential directive that prioritized the clearance of outstanding obligations for facilities with claims not exceeding 10 million shillings. The claims earmarked for settlement under this allocation have been duly verified and adjudicated and will be fully paid before the close of this financial year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government will subsequently prioritize payment of the outstanding claims exceeding the 10 million threshold once verified in the next budget. Mr. Speaker, the government has accelerated implementation of the affordable housing program to address Kenya's housing deficit, create jobs, stimulate local manufacturing, support MSMEs, strengthen county economies, and improve the quality of life for millions of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, through the program, number one, a total of 277,281 housing units have been completed or are under implementation nationwide as at May 2026. Two, the program has also successfully aggregated demand through the Boma Yangu platform, where more than 1 million Kenyans have registered their interest in home ownership, demonstrating both the scale of housing demand and growing public confidence in the government housing agenda. And I hope they will not listen to other voices outside there. Number three, to improve living conditions for students and support the expansion of higher education, the government has packaged 177,686 students' beds for development across universities, while 22,512 institutional housing units are under construction for our disciplined forces, teachers, healthcare workers, and other public servants. Number four, the program has also created over 640,442 jobs across the housing value chain through construction activities, professional services, manufacturing, logistics, and supporting industries. And of course, these are Kenyans who would be jobless if we didn't have their housing program. And number five, under the Modern Markets program, a total of 476 markets have been packaged for development nationwide, with 354 already under implementation. This will provide dignified trading spaces and support entrepreneurship, and that is the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the government continues to implement a number of interventions to empower our youth. And in particular, the government has, one, constructed 4 youth empowerment centers in Mwea, Chepalungu, Dagoretti North, and Mandera South constituencies. In addition, 25 youth empowerment centers have been equipped, bringing the total to 156 youth empowerment centers across the country. Number two, the government has also enhanced skills development and wealth creation through provision of loans to 93,559 youth entrepreneurs through the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. Additionally, 91,253 youth have benefited through startup grants under the National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement (NYOTA) program. The NYOTA program has also supported 51,604 youth through on-job experience in 26 counties across the country. And number three, government has also implemented Vijana Vuka na Afya project in Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa, where 72,623 youths have benefited from subsidized sexual reproductive health services. Mr. Speaker, in support of the creative economy, The government has established 3 film hubs in Dedan Kimathi University in Nyeri, and also in Bomet and in Migori counties, and fully equipped them with film production equipment. Additionally, a cinema theater has been established at Dedan Kimathi University of Technology with a capacity of 150 audiences. Further, to reach more youth, particularly in rural areas, a cinema machinani program has been rolled out. The government has also facilitated the production of 1,745 local and foreign films in Kenya and trained 1,847 filmmakers. Mr. Speaker, to further empower the youth, the government, in partnership with the United Nations Development Program, has developed the NextGen.ke initiative that will provide recently graduated youth with paid internship opportunities in the private sector, enabling them to acquire practical workplace experience and market-relevant skills. And I personally led the negotiation on this scope. To support this intervention, the government has committed an initial allocation of 2 billion towards its implementation. Mr. Speaker, given the scale of the youth employment challenge, the government further calls upon development partners, the private sector, philanthropic organizations, and other stakeholders to join this national effort, acknowledging that the task of creating opportunities for Kenya's youth extends beyond the capacity of government alone and requires a broad-based partnership for sustainable impact. Honorable members and Mr. Speaker and honorable members, to support MSMEs, the government has moved deliberately to put affordable credit, markets, and shared infrastructure directly into the hands of the enterprises and the young people at the base of the economy. To expand access to affordable credit, the government set up the Hustler Fund in 2022. Since then, the fund has actually disbursed 87 billion Kenya shillings to 28 million accounts and given 4.5 million people previously unscored or blacklisted Kenyans a formal credit history for the first time. Mr. Speaker, under the Nyota program, more than 5.6 billion has been invested in business skills training, mentorship, and startup capital, benefiting at least 84 youths in each of the country's 1,450 wards. And to promote value addition, the government has equipped 214 industrial development centers in our constituencies and opened regional markets to more than 1,100 of our enterprises, creating over 23,000 direct and indirect jobs. This is the bottom-up transformation at work, and in the coming year, we will scale it further. Mr. Speaker, the sustained investment by the government since 2022 has improved infrastructure development, thereby enhancing connectivity, boosting manufacturing, facilitating trade, and enhancing access to markets and essential services. Key achievements in this sector include the following. 1, expansion of road network across the country with over 2,669 kilometers of roads constructed and more than 132,000 kilometers maintained. Number 2, increase country's installed electricity generation capacity to 3,272 megawatts as at April 2026, with additional capacity expected from the 35 megawatts Globek power plant. To improve energy security and reliability, the government has modernized substations, strengthened the national grid, reduced system losses, and enhanced regional power interconnections. As a result, 73.45 kilometers of transmission lines and associated substations were constructed, while 200 kilometers of transmission lines were energized, including the Lesos, Kabarnet, Kitui Wote, and Sondu Homa Bay lines. In addition, 330 kilometers of distribution lines and 7 associated substations were also completed. Mr. Speaker, during the same period, access to electricity expanded significantly, with the number of customers connected rising from 8.9 million to over 10.2 million Kenyans. And number 3, industrialization is currently gaining momentum, with 10 county aggregation and industrial parks constructed over the last 3 years to support value addition and create employment opportunities across the counties. Mr. Speaker, we have also invested heavily in critical social sectors and supported the vulnerable in the society. And as a result, a social protection program have been strengthened with 1.2 million vulnerable Kenyans currently supported under the Inua Jamii program, helping to improve household resilience and protect the most vulnerable members of our society. And access to education and skill development has expanded through the implementation of far-reaching reforms across the education sector, including successful implementation of the competency-based curriculum. Number two, rollout of the student-centered funding model, through which nearly 500,000 university and TVET students have benefited from scholarships and loans based on need and merit. Number three, recruitment of 100,000 teachers to strengthen teaching capacity and improve learner outcomes, a record in the history of any government in this country. Number four, timely and consistent release, and I want to repeat, timely and consistent release of capitation funds to support learning in basic institutions. Number five, construction of over 23,000 classrooms and commencement of 1,600 laboratories in partnership with the National Government Constituency Development Fund, which continues to do a good job and deliver services to this country. Revitalization of technical and vocational education and training, with enrollment increasing from 562,499 trainees in 2022 to currently 825,484 trainees in 2025. Mr. Speaker, access to clean and safe water has improved, with an additional 6 million Kenyans gaining access to water services through investment in key projects, thus enhancing public health and supporting economic activity. This comes as no surprise, considering that Kenya is a leader in designing innovative, paradigm-shifting, locally led climate action. Take the FLOCA program, for example. It has broken the barrier in financing locally prioritized and locally led resilience investments in 1,380 wards across 45 counties, benefiting more than 2.5 million beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, key among the FLOCA gold standard investments are the 58-kilometer rehabilitation of the Colonial Yatta Canal in Machakos County, a reverse osmosis water treatment facility in Makueni, and the Kolanya Water Project in Busia County. As a matter of fact, Kenya is the leading beneficiary of the Green Climate Fund, with a total of 37 projects approved and with a portfolio of more than $1 billion, a remarkable achievement that led Kenya's identification as the host of Green Climate Finance Africa Region Office. Mr. Speaker, the government has made strides in the blue economy. Gains made under it includes fish landing sites. 5 coastal counties have modern landing sites under development. Mwape in Kwale, Kenya shillings 255 million. Kidongo in Mombasa, 175 million shillings. Kilifi Central, 275 million. Kipini in Tana River, 151 million. Mokowe in Lamu, 239 million. Each of the sites includes ice and cold storage facilities, boat docking areas, processing points, ablution blocks, market stalls, and waste management system, supporting fish preservation, trade, and employment. These projects are scheduled for completion by June 2026. Also included in these gains is the lake site. There are 4 fish landing sites, 9 sites along Lake Victoria, including Asat, Ogal, Bumbe, Wichlum, Asembo Bay, Wakula, Mainuga, Nyandiwa, and Gorkachola at 1.49 billion by end of June 2026. Along Lake Turkana is also the Kalokol fish landing site, 182 million. Contractor on site includes docking facilities, cold storage and ice plants, fish processing areas, and market support infrastructure. There is also Lower Engak Fish Market, 185 million. Contractor on site, features cold storage, hygienic market stalls, and processing facilities to support fishers and traders. This is the inclusion that we need in this country. Mr. Speaker, the arid and semi-arid lands in the northern Kenya region has historically been marginalized. And to drive inclusion and transform the region, the government is implementing various interventions targeting infrastructure development and social inclusion programs. These include construction of a 750-kilometer northern Kenya gateway corridor that connects 3 expansive counties of Isiolo, Wajir, and Mandera to boost regional connectivity and trade. Under this, there are various ongoing roads that government is implementing with the support of development partners. Mr. Speaker, the government is also implementing various water interventions in the region through drilling and equipping of boreholes, construction of dams and water pans, and expansion of bulk water supply systems. Further, key interventions in the education sector include recruitment of 5,000 teachers in the hard-to-reach areas, integration of alternative learning systems like Duksi or Islamic religious schools and madrasa into formal education framework, construction of low-cost boarding facilities and dormitories in this region, provision of scholarships to protect vulnerable students from dropping out, and implementation of TVETs to equip pastoralist youth with hands-on skills. Finally, Mr. Speaker, devolution has been strengthened through the consistent and timely disbursement of resources to county governments, ensuring continuity in service delivery and implementation of county development programs. Since 2022, funding to county governments has steadily increased, with equitable share to counties increasing from 370 billion shillings in financial year 2022-23 budget to 428 billion Kenya shillings in the financial year 2026-27 budget. Total county allocations that include shareable revenue and additional allocations from the national government allocations, as well as donor proceeds, has therefore increased from 392 billion to 502 billion over the same period. This reflects government's unwavering commitment to safeguarding and strengthening devolution as a key pillar of inclusive national development. Mr. Speaker, while we take pride in these achievements, we cannot afford complacency. Global uncertainty persists, high cost of living continues to affect many households, youth unemployment persists, and climate-related shocks continue to affect livelihoods and production. Mr. Speaker, our task is therefore clear: to solve the many problems facing Kenyans by sustaining targeted interventions and better in order to accelerate job creation for our youth, grow investment and trade, and deepen economic resilience. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, we chose the theme of the financial year 2026-27 budget as sustaining the bottom-up economic transformation agenda for resilient and inclusive growth amid global uncertainty. This theme aligns with the current challenges and priorities of the government. And Mr. Speaker, as we move forward in implementing the government's transformation agenda, we remain mindful of all the concerns raised by Kenyans on the prevailing fiscal environment and the need for continued prudence in the management of public resources. The current fiscal position that is characterized by narrowing fiscal space calls for careful prioritization and disciplined execution of government programs. Mr. Speaker, let me speak plainly about the fiscal reality we face. Kenya's infrastructure financing deficit stands at approximately $5 billion every year. That's about 650 billion Kenya shillings. Our development budget, while growing, cannot close that gap alone. The era of financing every road, every power line, and every dam through government borrowing and taxation is over. Not because we lack ambitions, but because we have learned from the consequences of that model. Debt finance infrastructure has left us with more debt service obligations that crowd out the very spending our people need most on health, education, and social protection. So, Mr. Speaker, we are going to build better. We are shifting from a model where government borrows to build to enhanced use of the public-private partnership and the recently established National Infrastructure Fund in funding priority infrastructure through private sector finances. That is the foundation on which this government's infrastructure program rests. Mr. Speaker, the Rironi-Nakuru Summit Expressway stands as proof. Construction of the expressway is now underway, and Kenyans will be driving on a modern 4 to 6 lane expressway once completed. Thank you. What makes this project truly historic is not the speed of delivery, it is how it was financed. Through the participation of the National Social Security Fund, both as a debt and equity investor, alongside international investors, a major national highway is being built with Kenyan capital by Kenyan workers and for the Kenyan people. Mr. Speaker, beyond the Rironi-Nakuru Summit project, the government will continue executing an ambitious infrastructure development plan through the National Infrastructure Fund. The fund will leverage on resources from privatization proceeds from mature national assets to attract private capital, domestic pension funds, and climate finance. Mr. Speaker, the rest of my statement now will present the economic context underpinning this budget, followed by the policy priorities, fiscal framework, expenditure proposals, and taxation measures for the financial year 2026-2027. I now turn to economic policy context, and I want to speak about the global context. Mr. Speaker, this budget, as I said earlier, has been prepared amidst heightened uncertainties associated with ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The conflict has disrupted critical energy infrastructure and major shipping routes, including the Strait of Hormuz, thereby exerting upward pressure on prices of energy and food. Mr. Speaker, against this backdrop, global growth is therefore projected to slow down to 3.1% in 2026 and 3.2% in 2027, from the average of 3.4% in both 2024 and 2025. Domestic economy. Back home, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the challenging global environment, the Kenyan economy has remained largely resilient, and the economy grew at an average of 5% in the period 2022 to 2025, outperforming the average global growth of 3.4% and that of sub-Saharan Africa of 4.1%. This performance reflects sound macroeconomic policy management, particularly prudent monetary and sound fiscal policies, sustained structural reforms, and the increasing diversification of the economy, which has enhanced its capacity to withstand severe shocks. Mr. Speaker, in 2025, the economy grew by 4.6% compared to a growth rate of 4.7% in 2024. This growth was supported by positive growth in all the sectors. All the sectors of the economy at least registered positive growth. The outlook for 2026 has been revised downwards, however, to 5% from the earlier projection of 5.3%, reflecting the adverse impact of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East to domestic economic activities. The economy is projected to maintain the momentum in 2027 with a projected growth rate of 5.2%. So, Mr. Speaker, macroeconomic indicators remain broadly stable through the emerging external pressures, though the emerging external pressures continue to impact domestic prices. And in particular, overall inflation increased to 6.7% in May 2026 from 5.6% in April and from 3.8% in May 2025 due to higher energy prices arising from the elevated global oil prices, but remained within the target range of plus or minus 2.5% over and above 5%. Inflation is expected to remain within the target range in the near term, assuming a de-escalation of the conflict in the Middle East and supported by appropriate monetary policy actions and government interventions. Expected stability in food prices due to favorable weather conditions and the stability in the exchange rate. Mr. Speaker, in April 2026, the government has deployed targeted stabilization measures to cushion consumers from the full impact of rising global fuel prices. These interventions include use of resources in the Petroleum Development Levy Fund to subsidize the fuel pump prices. And in addition, the government lowered the VAT rate on petroleum products for 3 months from 16% to 8%. Mr. Speaker, monetary conditions have eased considerably. This follows reduction in the central bank rate from 11.25% in December 2024 to the current rate of 8.7%, and I'm happy the CBK maintained the same rate for the time being. As a result, interest rates have declined over the same period The 91-day Treasury bill rate declined about 8.3% in May 2026 from 10.3% in December 2024. Similarly, average commercial banks lending rates declined to 14.5% in May 2026 from 16.9% in May 2025 and 17.2% in November 2024. Reflecting the decline in the lending rates, credit to the private sector expanded by 9.3% in the year to May 2026 from 2% in the year to May 2025 and a contraction of 1.4% in December 2024. The external sector remains resilient despite emerging risks. The current account deficit is projected at 3% of GDP in 2026 compared to 2.1% of GDP in 2025, reflecting the higher international oil prices, lower receipts from services, slower growth in remittance inflows, and reduced exports. This is due to the adverse impact of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. At the same time, official foreign exchange reserves remains adequate, as I mentioned, at USD 13 billion in May 2026, equivalent to 5.6 months of import cover, and continues to provide adequate cover and a buffer against short-term domestic and external shocks. The exchange rate has also remained broadly stable, averaging 129.4 shillings per US dollar in May 2026. And activities in Nairobi Securities Exchange have improved over the past 1 year. The Nairobi Securities Exchange 20-share index rose by 59.9% to 3,491 points in May 2026, up from 2,183 points in May 2025, while market capitalization expanded by 61.6% to 3,412 billion from Kenya shillings 2.11 billion over the same period, trillion over the same period. However, between February and May 2026, the Nairobi Securities Exchange 20-share index declined by 5.5% as investors became cautious of the rising global uncertainty associated with the conflict in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal policy stance for financial year 2026-27 and the medium term is anchored on a fiscal consolidation strategy that advances the priorities of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda while safeguarding debt sustainability and provision of essential public services. The strategy will be supported by continuous domestic revenue mobilization and expenditure rationalization through targeted tax and expenditure reforms. As a result, the fiscal deficit, including grants, is projected to decline gradually from 5.5% of GDP in the financial year 26-27 to 3.3% of GDP in financial year 28-29. Risks remain though. Domestically, climate-related shocks could disrupt agricultural production and infrastructure, while externally, geopolitical tensions, commodity price volatility, weaker global growth, and tighter financial conditions continue to adversely affect inflation, exports, and capital flows. The government will continue to monitor evolution of these risks closely and deploy timely policy intervention to safeguard stability, strengthen resilience, and sustain inclusive economic growth. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to the policy priorities and strategic interventions that will underpin the budget for financial year 2026-2027. Policy priorities and structural reforms. It will be anchored on bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, the economic context I have outlined is a clear reminder that we are operating in a period that demands resolve, discipline, and decisive actions. The convergence of global shocks and domestic pressures calls not only for incremental adjustments, but for bold and well-coordinated policy responses. In this regard, the government has taken and will continue to take firm and where necessary, decisive actions to consolidate recent gains, safeguard macroeconomic stability, protect livelihoods, and strengthen economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, our focus is not only on navigating the immediate challenges, but also on accelerating structural transformation, creating jobs at scale, and ensuring that the benefits of growth are broadly shared among all Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, these interventions are being implemented within a coherent and forward-looking framework anchored on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Better remains the government's principal vehicle for translating policy into tangible outcome, and at the household level by aligning investments, reforms, and institutions around the goal of inclusive growth and shared prosperity. Through the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, 5 core priority pillars, the government is scaling targeted interventions that address binding constraints to productivity, expand economic opportunities, and strengthen resilience across sectors. These priority pillars are deliberately structured to reinforce one another, ensuring that progress in one area catalyzes gains across the broader economy. Mr. Speaker, the government also continues to implement complementary cross-cutting policy interventions to sustain economic resilience, accelerate inclusive growth, and improve business environment. This will create a seamless transition to the next frontier of economic transformation. These interventions include the following. 1, strengthening fiscal and monetary policy coordination to safeguard economic stability and reinforce investor confidence. 2, enhancing fiscal sustainability by expanding domestic revenue mobilization and improving efficiency of public expenditure. 3, modernization of strategic infrastructure in transport and logistics, energy, and water sector to improve productivity, connect markets, lower the cost of doing business, and enhance competitiveness. 4, supporting industrial development, trade, tourism, blue economy, MSMEs, and innovation to accelerate job creation, broaden economic opportunities, and transform Kenya's economy to a net exporter of goods and services. 5, strengthening environmental conservation and climate change, mitigation and adaptation measures to promote sustainable development and resilience. And 6, supporting human capital development through continued investment in quality education, universal health care, and well-targeted social protection interventions. 7, advancing youth empowerment through targeted investment in skills development, entrepreneurship, digital opportunities, and access to affordable financing. And 8, strengthening governance reforms to enhance public service delivery. Now I want to talk about evidence-based decision-making. Mr. Speaker, as we implement this budget, the government reaffirms its commitment to strengthening economic planning and development as the foundation of sustainable growth, prudent resource allocation, and improved service delivery to our citizens. In the coming financial year, we will intensify efforts to institutionalize evidence-based planning and decision-making across all levels of government. This approach will ensure that public resources are directed to interventions that deliver the highest economic and social returns, aligning with the national development priorities. To achieve this, the government will accelerate the finalization and implementation of a comprehensive economic planning policy and an economic planning bill. These 2 instruments will create a coherent, transparent mechanism for identifying, prioritizing, and sequencing government policies, programs, and projects based on rigorous economic analysis, affordability, and measurable impact. Mr. Speaker, we will also continue to invest in national statistical system, policy research, data analytics, and monitoring and evaluation to provide timely, reliable evidence for decision-making. Integrated planning and data management system will be rolled out to improve coordination among ministries, departments, agencies, and even county governments. Mr. Speaker, through these measures, we will foster a culture of evidence-based policy making, strengthen public accountability, and ensure that every shilling spent delivers maximum value to the people of Kenya. On the policy and legal and institutional reforms front, Mr. Speaker, to strengthen economic stability, the government continues to roll out targeted structural, institutional, and regulatory reforms to improve the business environment, boost public services efficiency, and reinforce accountability in public finances. In building resilience against climate change, Mr. Speaker, the government has continued to make concerted efforts to strengthen disaster risk management. The recently enacted National Disaster Risk Management Bill, which is now an act of parliament, and I thank this National Assembly, provides a legal framework for coordination of disaster risk management activities across the 2 levels of government, supporting prompt responses when disasters occur. Mr. Speaker, to further strengthen the country's preparedness and response to climate-related risk, the National Treasury is spearheading the development of a new disaster risk financing strategy for the period 2026-2030, since the earlier strategy for the year 2018-2022 came to an end. Mr. Speaker, and in response to changes in climate, the government will continue to implement the financing locally led climate action program a transformative initiative that has unlocked green investments at the county level, empowering local communities to adapt to impacts of climate change. Mr. Speaker, to finance large-scale climate and environmental projects, the government will establish the Kenya Green Investment Facility in line with the Kenya's commitments under the nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. To further scale green financing, the government is finalizing the framework for issuance of sustainability-linked bonds with targets in forestry and rural electrification expansion. Mr. Speaker, Kenya secured the hosting rights for the Green Climate Fund Regional Office for East and Southern Africa in Nairobi, reinforcing the country's position as a regional green finance hub. Further, the National Treasury is at an advanced stage of accreditation as a direct access entity to the Green Climate Fund, enabling the country increase public sector-driven climate investments and opportunities. Mr. Speaker, the government will host the African Green Investment Forum in October 2026. And this forum will serve as a flagship continental initiative designed to mobilize substantial green finance, accelerate sustainable investments, and advance Africa's leadership in this domain. On public procurement reforms, Mr. Speaker, to operationalize procurement reforms and eliminate manual inefficiencies, the government officially launched the rollout of an end-to-end e-government procurement system in July 2025. The system